All right. We are live on Facebook. Hello, everyone. After taking a week off, I'm back from vacation. And my guest tonight on Unveiling is Dr. Sean Carey. He's a chiropractor up in Newburyport, Massachusetts. And Sean and I have known each other and worked together for about 5 years now. And I just want to say thank you for coming on the show and have you introduce yourself a little bit, Sean.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's my honor. My name is Sean Carey, and I'm a chiropractor in Newburyport, Massachusetts. But I also work as a spiritual guide as well. I'm a certified spiritual guide with the Modern Mystery School and a third step ritual master as well. And I met Jordan over 5 years ago now as part of my own spiritual path, and it was something that was really not just a turning point on my path, but it changed my whole life for the better in ways I could never have even imagined when I first reached out. So it's kind of cool to come full circle here.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being on. We talked about this a little bit before the show about what we wanted to talk about. And, we chose this topic tonight of practical spirituality. And I just would love to hear, before we dive into really talking about that, just a little bit about your background. I know you're a chiropractor, and maybe your background, and then kind of what led you to this work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a chiropractor. I absolutely love what I do. I have a really amazing family practice in Newburyport, and we get to help a lot of people. But my background, as far as kind of my own development, like when I was a child, my mother had a brain tumor, and my dad had horrible migraine headaches. He broke his neck when he was younger. So there was a lot of kind of pain and suffering in the family, and I really decided I wanted to become a healer at that point. And I never really liked hospitals just because of the memories of like, there was so much trauma for me in hospitals as a young person. And I also didn't really connect with the philosophy of the traditional medical system either. But I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to be a healer. I knew I wanted to be a doctor. And then when chiropractic came up as an opportunity for me, I was somebody who was just a 20-year-old kid in chronic pain from sports injuries. And I was studying nutrition, I was studying exercise science, I was working as a personal trainer, and I thought I wanted to be a nutritionist, like a PhD nutritionist. And I met a chiropractor one day, and it totally changed my life. And then I went off to a chiropractic school in Texas. I was at University of Maine for my undergrad, and then I moved back home to open up practice.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
How did chiropractic kind of lead you to this work, or toward deeper healing beyond just the body?
Well, chiropractic at its core, it's very spiritual. And I think anybody who really works with people, whether you're working with people in an intimate setting, whether it's a chiropractor or a massage therapist or an acupuncturist, when you work with people and you're in their energy field and you have your hands on people, like, and you're doing that over and over again, what I ended up kind of hitting was this wall where people were having a lot of energy, and I could kind of realize that. And some people weren't responding to my treatment, and I knew it was more of an energetic piece. There might have been some emotional or mental trauma that was really in their energy field that I could feel, but I didn't know how to help them.
Right.
And as a chiropractor, I could see that, but I didn't really have any background as far as actually how to help serve that person beyond what I was currently doing.
Right. And you'd been a chiropractor for a few years before you found the mystery school, right?
Yeah, I had been a chiropractor for 4 years, I think. And I remember when I first came and saw you for the first session, and I was just, and completely passionate about my work and what I was doing. I just wanted to do it on a higher level. And it was something where I had, I'd been going to so many different seminars. I traveled all over the place, having different business coaches and mentors, and like some of the best mentors in chiropractic. I got to really study under their wing, and I've had amazing coaches and helpers. And when I was in undergrad, I was really addicted to personal development in a way. I think I learned how to speed read, and I read hundreds of books about personal development, and it was very much an intellectual exercise where you're constantly kind of motivating yourself, and you're setting your intentions for the day. And there were some really amazing things with it, but I certainly hit a wall as far as what the fruits actually were in my life. And it was something where it was my friend Dr. Nick Penzarella had seen you. And I saw him at a chiropractic event, and he was just glowing. And I was like, what did you do? And he's like, I went and saw this guy, and I did this healing called life activation. It was like $250. And I was like, okay, what's his number? And I texted you that night, and we had the session the next day.
Awesome.
Because
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I saw something in him when he did that healing, that life activation, where it's like, oh, like there's something amazing like happening with him. And especially in chiropractic, it's like as a business owner and as a healer, when you're off at all, it really affects your work. It affects your service. It affects the amount of people you can help. It affects all your income. It affects everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important to continually bring your best self to the table.
Absolutely.
And it was something that I saw with that session. I was like, oh wow, whatever he did, like that doesn't make sense in my logical mind at all, but it's obviously working for him, and I want to try that.
Yeah. I had a similar experience with the person I'm now married to, when
Yeah.
we were first dating, and she got life activated, and I originally felt like I didn't really need that. I wasn't
Yeah.
wasn't going to go have that, but she probably could benefit from it. And she came home, and I was just like, wow, I see such a difference in her energy and her face, and her eyes looked different, and everything was just much more expressed. Like her soul was more expressed through her body and through her features and her eyes. And I was just like, okay, I can see such a difference. I want to have that done myself also. And the rest is kind of history after that. But when we find this work, it hits everyone really differently. What would you say like the first 6 months were like in terms of your shifts and changes when you found the mystery school?
Well, when I found the mystery school, I was in the midst of this really intense spiritual awakening. I had something called a Kundalini awakening, which I didn't even know what that was at the time. But I had this experience where I was meditating in the backyard. It felt like I got struck by lightning almost. Like it was this surge of energy that went through my heart. I'd been doing these heart opening meditations for every day for months. And then one day it was just like this explosion. And as after that experience, I became just very, very psychic, very empathic. I felt like I was like living in multiple worlds at the same time. It was this experience that was really kind of difficult to navigate, and I didn't know anybody I could talk to about it. And it was really difficult for me because I thought if I went to a regular doctor, I'd be institutionalized for that. Like here's what my experiences are.
You might have been.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense in the regular world, but I was having trouble functioning. I went from being I was this really successful person to all of a sudden I'm having difficulty filling out a check because I'm just so kind of connected to the higher spiritual realms, or just disconnected from here in some way because of that Kundalini awakening. Mm-hmm. So when I met you, like there was all these breakthroughs that happened, but there was something that really healed and came together in me. So it was this piece of my core just like upgraded or healed, and it was like all those gifts that I had that were that I was really, really having difficulty with. All of a sudden, I could use them and not be completely overwhelmed by them. And then all my life just completely started changing, like different areas, different ways where I'd give my power away had just like, it got really reflected back to me super quickly. And I changed that. Different relationships changed, addiction patterns that I'd completely stopped. That I was, and at that point, I wouldn't have even said I was addicted to those things. But then it was like the work, it changed my life in a way where it just wasn't a match for me anymore. And things that were bad for me that I thought I got joy from, I just stopped getting joy from. And all of a sudden I started living my life like more innately and more from my soul in a way that actually was doing things that brought me joy.
That was super fast for you too.
Yeah. Well, it was like, I got that, I got the taste of the energy, and it was just something where it was like, I think anybody who does this work can really connect to this piece where you might not know exactly what it does, but you know that it's good. Like there was zero doubt in my mind. There was zero doubt in any part of me that this was something that was really good for me. Like something good happened when I had that first life activation. And when I did that initiation, something really, really, really good happened for me.
Yeah.
I couldn't put it into words, but it was like that feeling of that goodness that came into me. I was like, I want more of that. So I started doing more sessions and studying the tree of life, and my life just accelerated so fast in so many good ways.
Yeah. It's hard to believe it's only been 5 years, but
yeah,
like you're a totally different person in so many ways.
Yeah. And I
recall what you were like before. I just even who you were 2 years ago is not anything like what you are now. So we are always just growing through so many layers. With this work. Absolutely. So let's dive in with practical spirituality. Tell me what that means to you. What's practical about this work? What's practical about spirituality in general? Because most people, I think, maybe some people watching the show, or, they're already initiated. It makes total sense to them why we'd say practical spirituality. But for a lot of people, spirituality is something that you do to have this like internal connection with yourself or with a higher power, whatever you call that. And it's like one of those aspects of the pie chart of life. To have a balanced life, you should have spirituality in your life, right? Like a lot of coaches will say that, a lot of personal development seminars will teach something like that. You got to have the spiritual portion and component. And yet that's often different than like the financial component or the relationship component or the business component, right? So what is practical spirituality to you?
Well, to me, it's this way. Before, if you had asked me before I did any of this, I would have considered myself a very spiritual person.
Mm-hmm.
I meditated, and I certainly read lots of books on spirituality, and I had lots of mental concepts as far as spirituality, and I was really kind of looking for signs and synchronicities and things like that to follow. Mm-hmm. But when I started this work and I started initiation, there was something that opened up with me, Jordan, where like all of a sudden I could connect to higher energies than I had ever done before. Like what I thought was like a really advanced level, like all of a sudden within 2 months after initiation, I had completely dwarfed where I was as far as my spiritual progress, my intuition, my ability to connect to my spirit guides and higher self. It was within just a couple months, it was a completely different place. And then from that perspective, I was able to start really living my life in a way where I really stopped making mistakes in the same way. Because if you're living life and you're really connected with your spirit guides and your higher self, and you're doing the rituals that we're doing every day, like your life flows completely differently. Mm-hmm. and it's reflected out. It's reflected in the world outside of us. So my business became more successful. I used to work 6 days a week. I was always doing stuff with work. I was petrified to travel. Like I had this fear that if I left my office, everything would collapse. And so I was run by so many different fears, and that just kind of all got taken away. Like now I work 3.5 days a week, and I make significantly more income than I did when I worked 6 days a week. And it's and I travel all over the place. I've trained with this work in Ireland and London and all over the US and Canada. And somehow, like in a way that completely defies logic to me, the more I go towards that light, the more the light comes in, and my life just gets filled with the exact people I need for support, with the finances I need for support, mm-hmm. The mentors and teachers I need to help me learn that next thing. And awesome. And to me, this whole path is this way of, we're connecting with higher light, but we're bringing it down here to make the world better. We're not just going up to a higher light to escape and to just kind of geek out on the spiritual high. Like we have that with our lineage, but we come down here and we bring this into this world, into our lives, into the family's life. And it's like, and you will see the fruits of this work in your life, in your family, in your community. And that's been the most exciting thing for me, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And, there's still, I think, a lot of people who, when they watch something like this, it's so hard to put what we do into words with the mystery school, because everyone has such personalized, unique experiences of what that would mean for them. But can you give some examples of like what you've seen in your family? You were mentioning that like helps shift family dynamics.
Yeah. Well, my little brother is one of my favorite examples. That was actually something where originally I never saw myself doing this work because I just thought it was really weird. And my ego had, very much fought. I'm I'm a doctor. I'm very into neurology, and I don't want to do that weird stuff. Mm-hmm. And my little brother, I just have one brother. He was really struggling. He had some problems when he was younger, and basically developed some mental illness challenges, some addiction challenges. And my family had done everything we could to really help him, but nothing was working. Everything from like natural health and supplements to different doctors and medications, like nothing was really helping him. And after within 2 sessions with you, like here's a great story. I was having such a great impact as far as what the work was doing with me, that for Christmas one year, I was like, Michael, I'm going to buy you a session with Jordan. And except this was like in like September or October. So he got his Christmas present like 3 months early, and it was a life activation with you. And he did so well that I called my parents within like a couple of weeks, and they had seen the change with him too. And I was like, do you guys see what's happening with Michael? Like, he's changing, right? And we're all like, yeah, like he's changing. This is amazing. And I convinced them, I was like, for Christmas, you guys both have to get him a session with Jordan too. Okay. Like, this is the most progress we've seen with him as far as like him finding his joy and stepping into his purpose
Right.
in ever. And sure enough, they got him sessions with you. So for Christmas, he got 3 sessions with you 1 year. And it was all way before the actual Christmas. And after the second session, he ended up being married. He met literally the day after his second session, the full spirit activation. He met the woman he's now married to. And then within 6 months, they bought a farmhouse together, which was his dream. And he went from somebody who couldn't hold down a job for more than 2 weeks and was living at my house or my parents' house, and kind of struggling to stand up on his own feet. And then everything shifted for him within a few sessions.
And now he owns his own farm.
And now he owns his own farm. And that's just one story. But we could talk certainly for hours about all the different changes I've seen with my family.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I you've already touched on this, but I want to ask you what would you say the biggest impacts have been using these tools in your life, and how do you use them without going into, we're not teaching a class, so we're not like handing down ancient rituals on Zoom, because that doesn't work. It doesn't, it's always only in person. It's a sacred ceremony with initiation and all of that. But how have you used these tools in your life, and what do you use them for? Like, what happens in your, maybe like give me a sense of your day or your week as you use these tools, and what you notice immediately. I mean, I know we're talking more about the long term and the fruits and the transformation and the acceleration and the spiritual deepening, but like day to day, what do you do with these tools?
Yeah. Well, I start my day with rituals. So I do rituals in the morning and at night that we're taught, and I typically meditate at evening. That's just kind of what works best for me. Mm-hmm. But basically, the way that I use them is I have this perspective that, and there's something that is part of our Hermetic teaching, like the world without us, our world is a reflection of what's happening within us. Mm-hmm. So what the tools do, and the different things that the courses and healings, is they continually bring up things within me that I need to work on to go to my next level, to help me, the things that I need to heal, or things that I need to shift. And then I address those things as they come up with the different tools and healings that we have. So it's this mirror. Like, I'm seeing the mirror of what's happening within me. And I know that when I fix those things, my world gets better, as well as the world at large.
I mean, that's just like a huge key that you just dropped there.
Yeah.
In terms of just very casually in 10 seconds, like, oh yeah, and here's how we heal the world. Whoa. Yeah. I mean, that's a big deal, to use tools that you actually can feel like on a day-to-day basis are changing the world. And I think maybe for some people, if they're new to spirituality, just that concept is pretty mind-blowing. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I'll say more about it, but I think it is something that people really need to live and experience too. Because the issue is, I really thought I was doing that before, and I was, but at such a slower pace. And there's something special about the lineage and the work that we have, where these tools are really freaking powerful. And I was talking with a client of mine last night, and she was telling me like how amazed she was by the progress she's made since her initiation. That was maybe a month ago or so. Sorry, would you say that question again?
Just in terms of like helping people to understand, I didn't totally ask it as a question. So, how it is possible to, we're talking these really hermetic, spiritual teachings about, you change something inside and then the world changes automatically. And that is, I think, difficult for some people to wrap their heads around at first, but like you said, it has to be experienced. And these tools also help us do it in such a, well, I don't want to be repetitive, but they help us do it in such a practical way that you actually see the results day to day. I'm just hoping you talk a little bit more about like seeing those results.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So one of the perspectives I had with this is really going in as somebody who's had scientific training and looking at it as a scientist. And it's something that we tell all our students to do. And basically, we give people an outline and empower thyself. Like in the Empower Thyself course, you gave me an outline as far as go home and do these rituals morning and night. And then here's how you connect with your higher self through meditation. And I started doing those things. And we know, like, and my life just changed. I followed your prescription, if you will. And I could immediately start seeing the changes in my life within the span of a couple of weeks. So it's something that following a recipe that works is going to really, really help people. But going a little bit deeper with that, we're all connected as human beings. And that's something that can be really tough in the world right now, as we were just talking about before, is like the world is, as we were talking about before the phone call, the world is in this state of, there's a lot of suffering right now. And we feel that within our souls, the suffering that exists within our family or exists within other people, our community, and that type of thing. So as we heal those things within us, it also reflects out into the community and into the world at large. But then there's also this very direct, there's this very direct piece where as you heal and clean up things within you, as you heal those things that are taking away from your self-worth or your confidence, you're going to feel more worthy, and you're going to attract more abundance and love into your life. As you heal chaos and disorganization in your mind, you're going to have a much more organized, kind of efficient life. As you heal apathy within, you're going to have more passion in your life. Right. And for me, it's incredibly practical to do that. And it's really going back to the scientific method as far as how it was meant to be practiced, where we have a hypothesis, we test it with the tools that we're given, and then we we look at the results that we're getting, and everything that and then from there we come up with a conclusion and see whether our hypothesis was correct or not. And with this work, every test that I've done, like the more light that's come into my life, the more tools I've brought light into my life, the better my life has got. And there's not any time where I've done a healing or an activation or a meditation, and then my life got worse. It was like things may have got brought up for me to heal, but every time I do that, my life gets better.
Yeah. So, touching into lineage and the suffering in the world right now, we say our lineage is thousands of years old, or maybe more than thousands of years old. And, we were chatting before the show, we were talking about, well, what are we going to discuss tonight? And you were saying there's something really special about this, and that you wanted to really share a little bit about that. So if you could tell people what you feel is so, like, what is it that makes this lineage so special? What are we bringing, and what's happening when we're working with lineage?
I think it's an amazing thing to talk about. It's probably one of my favorite things with this work, because when we do, like when I do a healing with a client, or when we're teaching a class or something like that, it's not just me, Sean Carey, doing this work. I'm working with all these beings from higher dimensions, the hierarchy of light, the different angelic beings, and all these masters of light that work with our spiritual lineage, and they come in and basically help support us in the work that we're doing. So we're not doing that as one person, we're doing that as one person in the physical who's backed by this whole spiritual lineage that's coming in and assisting with every aspect of the work. And as a human being, I might have different gifts, but it's nothing like what I can do with the support of these advanced spiritual beings, basically, that we're able to connect with.
Yeah. And yet I think most people who do spiritual work, light work, healing work, you name it, even many people I know who are massage therapists or chiropractors or acupuncturists who are not initiated would also say the same thing you just said. Well, I'm working with all these different beings, and it's like, and we are, and yet, so what's so unique about our lineage in context of that? Because it is a thing, it is a phenomenon that people are really, we're always tapped into something bigger than just us as humans in general, without initiation. And so what is it with our lineage? What is it with initiations in the mystery school that is specific and unique?
There's so many things there. One of the main things that I will say is the ability, as far as how we're able to access higher dimensions. It's just, there's gateways of the soul and doors of self-knowledge that open up for us through initiation. That would be so hard to do without this. It's something that I was thinking about earlier today and yesterday, and I was saying that, really without the initiation, in order to gain the level of self-knowledge that we're able to get with initiation and kind of the year that follows, you either have to be somebody who's kind of older and lived a really diverse life, Like you've had a lot of life experiences that have ended up going back to wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
or you have to have spent hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of hours in meditation to really work on knowing yourself on those deeper levels. With initiation, it's like those doors open and we're able to start accelerating that process so fast that you really start to know yourself. And from that power and that place of knowing yourself, then when you work with those different beings, it's from a completely different place. Like you have that key to work with them in a different way than you would.
Yeah. And what's the purpose of lineage? Like, why do we even have it?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it's more powerful than not having lineage, and that's all good. You know, it accelerates your spiritual journey, and that's good. But what's the purpose behind it?
Yeah. Well, so there's 7 ancient mystery schools on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
We're one of the 7, and only 2 of the 7 have basically been open to the public throughout history, where you could join if you weren't a monk or a nun.
Mm-hmm.
The other one, which has been throughout Europe at different points, that was very, very secret and was by invitation only. So we're the only one that's actually open to the public, where people can be listening to this podcast. They've never heard of a mystery school. They don't know initiates, and they can reach out and contact us and basically become part of the lineage, essentially. So
it's a really unique thing. I mean, yeah, it's only been that way since 1997.
Yeah.
Before that wasn't even an option. So
yeah, it's something we are so absolutely blessed to have, because this really didn't exist before. And the teachings and the energy that we have access to is beyond incredible. And each of these 7 different mystery schools has a specific purpose that basically are helping hold specific energies for the planet. And for us, for our lineage, it's really about world peace and about Shambhala and about bringing this level of hope that the world so desperately needs right now.
And say more about that, because Shambhala is a word a lot of people haven't heard. I mean, we've said it a few times on this podcast before, but what is Shambhala?
Shambhala is really the way I understand it is this structure for a new world. It's a world where, when we look at the world around us right now, it's like the healthcare system is broken, education is broken, the way we take care of our environment is broken, our food system is broken. Shambhala is a way where we can live in world peace, and we can have these things functioning at a higher level that has really been the potential for humanity. So we can live with peace on earth, but in this way of having peace on earth, it's really much closer to having heaven on earth, where we're able to really live the life in a way that's royal and healthy and vibrant beings, where we're able to devote more time to spirituality and not struggle. And there's less suffering on the planet. There's certainly less war and violence, mentally and physically.
Yeah.
And it's a real thing that exists, that we're working hard every day to make a reality.
Yeah, I mean, that, and when we go back to the understanding of this mystery school is here to help bring Shambhala for the planet. It's like, when we talk a lot about it in the mystery school, we talk a lot about Shambhala because, I mean, honestly, let's be real. Like, who doesn't want to live there? I want to live there. I think you want to live there. Like, I want to live in a world where people don't really suffer in the same way they do now, or where suffering is reduced to the minimum level that's required for spiritual growth.
Yeah.
Spiritual growth seems to, for many people, require some level of suffering to wake them up, and then some level of suffering to sort of shake them out of their like illusions about what's going on in life and in reality. But then most people that live in our world see so much more suffering in their life than they would ever really need to wake up.
Yeah.
And the suffering kind of like grinds them down over and over again, and beats them into like hopelessness about, well, how do I live a good life if this is the state of the world?
Yeah.
How do I live a good life if, people are suffering around me? I mean, even if you're doing well, is it okay that your neighbor's not doing well? Is it okay that your friend's not doing well? Is it okay that, I don't want to in any way get political with this conversation, but is it okay that like someone who really needs a certain kind of service or healing or healthcare or food, that they don't have it?
Yeah.
And again, I'm not going political and saying that, well, it's not a left wing or a right wing solution. It's not conservative or liberal. I'm not talking like that. I'm talking about a set of spiritual energies that come down to the world and change the whole conversation about what it means to be human.
Yeah.
about what it means to live a good life.
Yeah.
Right now, living a good life is defined so diversely, right? Like my good life, your good life, someone else's good life, living your best life, all the different ways that people talk about that. It is individual. And yet there's a whole lot of things that like everybody needs to live a good life. And we could probably all list those off in like, 1 minute on a piece of paper. Like, I'm going to need a place to live, and I'm going to need clothes, and I'm going to need food. I'm going to need some kind of healthcare, whether it's, Western allopathic medicine or something holistic or something beyond all of that we can't even really imagine yet. There's different classes that students come to in the mystery school, like the galactic activation classes, where we're looking at life from like a higher, galactic perspective, like not just human, but who are we as citizens of the galaxy, not just citizens of planet Earth. And that sounds like, science fiction to some people, but Earth is in the galaxy, and there's other beings in the galaxy too. And maybe they're a lot more like us than we would think from the movies. Maybe there's a lot of different levels of life in a lot of other dimensions, and it's not just physical life, but what if everything's alive? And what would our world look like if we treated it as though everything were alive?
Yeah.
And had respect for all of it and respect for ourselves. So Shambhala has all these different components of respect for life, love for all beings, things that honestly spiritual teachers in every religion have been talking about for thousands of years. Shambhala is like the manifestation and the grounding of that reality for the average everyday person. Someone who just right now, they wake up and they roll out of bed and they put their shoes on, they get their coffee and they go to work. In Shambhala, that person is going to be living in a different way.
Yeah.
Maybe they're still going to do all those things, but their approach to their life is going to have consciousness and awareness like it's hard for us to even imagine right now.
Yeah.
What if everyone on Earth had the level of awareness of, a monk or a nun or someone who meditates 8 hours a day?
Yeah.
But what if there are ways to get there that don't require your entire life's energy, like a monk or a nun, to be totally focused on the spiritual life? But that spirituality and spiritual life are actually available to everyone. Which comes back to what we're talking about tonight, that spirituality, if it's going to change the world, has to be practical.
Yeah.
It has to do something that's unique and like is able to uniquely like grab spiritual energy, bring it down, do something with it in a short period of time, rather than, for a lot of people, I just initiated several people last weekend, and both of them are busy moms.
Yeah.
And, the mystery school tools, like neither of those, the two moms who are in the class, neither of them are going to start meditating 8 hours a day. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
They do not have that time in their schedule. When I was meditating 3 hours a day for many years, I was in high school and college, and I didn't have to, work a job and I did work a job, but it wasn't like I didn't have to support myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I didn't have to like have a career.
Yeah.
I didn't have to like pay lots of bills. I could focus on spirituality in a way that most people, that was a huge luxury.
Yeah.
And most people don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
And even now in my life, I don't have 3 hours a day on a regular basis. I have to carve out a day, like a sacred special day where I'm going to get everything done. And then I'm going to spend 3 or 4 hours meditating. And that's an amazing day. And maybe I get to actually do that once a week, once a month. It just depends.
Yeah.
And when I really need to fill my cup and I need to do that more, maybe I'll carve out more time, but I make my own schedule. Not everyone makes their own schedule. So, with practical spirituality, if you wanted to convey to people like the most important message about what's possible for them, like, what would you say? What's the most that help you could give someone to understand practical spirituality?
I think part of it is to understand that, firstly, just to reiterate, just really quickly, is you really have to understand that the world you're creating is from what's happening within you. Like you have to kind of like really have that piece of understanding. But then just imagine what life would be like as if you were constantly within the flow of what's happening from your higher self and your spirit guides, and you were able to listen. And then everything that you did was basically guided. So your different decisions were guided, your healings were guided, your relationships were guided. Anything I do, whether it's a new project, whether it's any new endeavor that I do, I always set the energy in motion first. Like I always help create that bridge energetically, and then I take the action steps in my life. So when I do take the action steps, it's like you're not walking through mud. You're walking through this path that's almost been like pre-paved. You're walking through the snow, but the footsteps are already there by the angels showing you just where to go and where to avoid the potholes, and where that you don't step through the ice and that type of thing.
So you're always connecting and
Yeah.
asking for guidance.
Yeah.
And then you're always preloading the energy, so to speak, with rituals or meditation or prayer.
Yeah.
And then you're following that.
Yeah. And just like a scientist, like you do it as an experiment, like, or I took this path on as an experiment initially, and it was I started testing it and what would happen, and then looking at how my life was, and it was like, wow, my life is really getting better. It's getting significantly better, and I got a lot out of the personal development field and all the books I read. But it's now at this point I tend to get more from sitting down and meditating for an hour and a half than I do from reading a personal development book. It's like there's just this way of those higher energies going right through your core and into your soul about what you need to know in this moment, and what your soul needs, and the healing that you might need, or the guidance and clarity that you might need. And then that's that place where you live your life. Like that just becomes how you operate. That's your default operating system. And then you look at that trajectory of life. It's like, I've been doing this for 5 years, but that person 5 years ago was so many versions of me ago. And if I hadn't done this path, I'm sure my life would be different, because 5 years is a lot, but it wouldn't be different to the degree that it is now. And it wouldn't have all the amazingness from so many different areas that it really does.
Yeah.
Like you look at a person's life that's really doing this, and you're like, wow, this is a magical being, and they're living this really incredible life.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that, like, for me, the practical spirituality, especially with the higher teachers, I remember like sitting in the higher classes, and I would, scan them. And it was like, I was just kind of like testing them for incongruencies or ways that they were like out of alignment, because I was like, kind of in all my other experiences, there was something out of balance, or there's something that it just wasn't quite like
with other seminars or other
yeah
systems, right?
Yeah, it just might have been, there's like kind of pieces missing. Let's say it that way. It's like, there's like these kind of important pieces missing. And I was really looking at these teachers and being like, and I couldn't find like the chip in the armor, so to speak. I couldn't find those pieces that were missing. And I was like, wow, this person's like really that happy and joyous, and they really are that fulfilled, and they're really abundant. And it's like, oh, they're healthy. And it's like, you can see that the relationships and the way they carry themselves is like, it's the fruit of this work. It's what happens when you live that way for a long period of time.
Right. What would you say to someone who's newer to the spiritual life, who wants good results, they want good fruits, they're hearing this podcast, but they're not quite down with the understanding that you've shared a couple of times now, that you need to understand that your life happens from the inside out? Like, because that's in a lot of books, that's in a lot of teachings, that's in a lot of seminars from many different teachers and gurus and coaches and all that stuff. So it's said, but honestly, I'll be honest myself. Like, I had done many other things before I found the mystery school, and I didn't fully believe that piece until I got initiated. And honestly, it took initiation and Kabbalah and maybe Healer's Academy and several years of my life because it's a slow study, I guess, before I really trusted that I actually was living my life from the inside. I knew I was, but I didn't trust that it was going to work all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't trust the practical spirituality for a couple of years, honestly. It took me a few years because I had been used to, in my life leading up to getting initiated in the mystery school, I had been used to me trying really hard and then failing. And then trying really hard and then kind of succeeding, but ending up building something that I wasn't really proud of and that wasn't really me. And then I had to scrap it all and abandon it and start over. Like I thought for a while I was going to, be a doctor, and I did pre-med for 2 years, and I was like, no, that's not what I want. Like, that's just an idea. I have to tear that down. And I was like, actually, I'm going to be a chiropractor, and then I'll stick with the pre-med. And I was like, no, I don't want to be a chiropractor. Oh, I'm going to go to massage school. No, that's not really it either. And then, I ended up studying so many different things in college. But then by the time I graduated college, I was like, none of that's really what I want. What I really know that I am is a healer. And so I started really building a foundation. But I spent 10 years of my life, because I started waking up around 11. I started really committing to being a healer around 22. So 10, 11 years of my life building something, looking at it, and then realizing it didn't represent who I am or what I wanted. So I had learned over growing up that if I set my mind to something, I might not get what I want. I might fail. I might have to totally start over. The universe might let me down. Like, that's what I learned about was spirituality. I thought spirituality meant that, you meditate a lot and you get really connected with something, and then the universe rips it away.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, at least that I work, is maybe not, because we all attract where we come from, right?
Yeah.
So I've attracted clients and students like that because I can relate to their experience. And
Yeah.
I don't know what you would say to this. I'd love to hear in just a moment, but I think a lot of people associate spirituality with this ungrounded,
Yeah.
constant change that, rips away your comfort zone in such a way that it leaves you high and dry.
Yeah.
And I know, like, when I graduated from college, my parents were like, God, I hope he grows up really soon and stops it with that spirituality crap.
Yeah.
Basically, like, we hope he gets a real job one day because we don't want to support him in our old age because he's so spiritual. Right.
Yeah.
And so that was that for them, my parents and my family looking at me, I was like the example of, for many years in my teenage years, in my early 20s. And then I found the mystery school, and all of a sudden everyone in my family was like, what are you doing? What's different about what you're doing? And then they all got initiated.
Yeah.
They all got activated. They started doing Kabbalah, and now I run, Modern Mystery School Boston with my sister. Like, that's, the doors to her office right there. And that's an amazing gift. A lot of people, walk a spiritual path, and it leads them to good things, but also to a lot of disappointments.
Yeah.
I see that with a lot of people, especially people who are older, who have been on a spiritual path for a long time. They come and they're kind of downtrodden.
Yeah.
By the lack of results that they've seen.
Yeah.
In certain ways. So I think it's a powerful thing to realize that, like, real results in the physical world are possible with this lineage, with this work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, it's something that it's one of those things. It's like, it's this internal door, I think, that has to open for people. Where, like, before I met you, a few months before I met you, I remember there were several moments, but I remember praying next to my bed. I was just really having a tough time being ungrounded, going through this Kundalini awakening, having all this intuition and psychic senses opening up, and just having difficulty functioning in the world. And there's been other times in my life where this happened, but I really opened this door and was like, God, I need help, or angels, I need help, the universe, I need help. Please help me in some way. Like, I don't know what I need, but please help me. Like, there has to be something better than what I'm going through. I know the world can be better than this. And, I think for everybody who's questioning that we talked about, like, you really have to open that door, and you really have to open that door and then connect with that, that pure light that exists within you, and is like basically that tunnel straight to heaven, and connect with that, and, kind of show that vulnerability and that openness. And that really is that gateway for miracles to come in. Because until we really get to that point, it's like we're kind of talking from more of that intellectual perspective, and it's like, and what happens is we hit this wall, like we're talking about. It's like, that's good until you hit a certain wall, and then you don't quite get past it. Like, spirituality for me too, it's like, I've been doing all these things, but it's like I wasn't breaking through my walls. Like, I needed to really open that door. That light needed to come into that core part, the part that was shameful and vulnerable, and felt inadequate for different things that I really desperately, or I really desired, that I wasn't able to manifest. And so that light came in, and then it started setting up. Like, I met you, and then I'd have different resistance pop up before something that was good for me on the path, and I'd have to kind of battle my negative ego through it. And my mind would tell me all the reasons why I shouldn't, spend the money for Empower Thyself or something like that. And I just had to really trust that light, and trust the feelings that I was getting, and sense the energy of it. And in the mystery schools in the ancient times, it was, when we're talking about the only other mystery school available to the public, like, it was really, the opportunity to join the mystery school would be presented as a test, where people would say, they'd invite somebody to a get together. But the energy was like, we're really inviting you to this, the secret mystery school get together, to see if you might be someone who could be an initiate. And like, there's that energy that exists when somebody's watching something like this. Like, what's the energy of it? And have you opened those doors within you where you're really, really ready to take the next step forward towards your highest self, regardless of whatever this is that we're talking about? But for you, like the individual who's listening, what is your highest good? What is your highest godliness? Like, are you opening the doors to step forward? And if you're not, why? Because it's like, for me, suffering is when we keep those doors closed. Like the more we're resisting that highest light, the more we're going to suffer. And I know, we both haven't had easy lives in many ways, but it's like, I suffered enough. I really, I want to live a life of joy. And this is something where opening that door and just continually doing that and walking towards that light, like that's where the magic comes in. And that's where then you get access to tools or a teacher or something happens. And then you'll be able to start seeing those shifts, I think.
Awesome.
But for me, there really is something very special about what we have, and it's not. It's just not like anything else I've ever experienced. It really is very unique. And lineage, it's just such an unfamiliar concept with people. But then when you get a healing or initiation in a lineage, it's like, wow, there was something so powerful there.
Yeah, there's something unique and special about lineage. And
yeah,
it's at the end of our time here, but that concept or understanding or experience of, how do I say it? Like knowing that there's more, but not necessarily trusting yet. I think that's a place that a lot of people hang out in for a long time.
Yeah.
Like I hung out there for a really long time, like reading a lot of books, like you were talking about, you used to read a lot of books and studying a lot of things and doing a lot of meditation. And like, I know that there's more, but I'm not really ready to like put my foot down and like actually move forward on it.
Yeah.
Or like actually find a teacher. And it's like when we really, the soul is going through something during that time. And it's going through that suffering. It's going through the suffering of life. And after enough cycles, and I don't know how many cycles, and you don't know how many cycles, but that soul that's going through it is aware that it's in some sort of loop, learning a lesson. And then once it goes through that cycle or that loop enough times, it eventually decides, hey, I'm done. Like it pops out of that and starts to take like the ownership of the awareness, maybe is the best way to say it, that I am creating my own life.
Yeah.
That is an inside out job. That it's not my parents or my school or my religion or someone else who's telling me the way that my life is going to be, but I'm actually saying how my life is going to be. And that actually has a real tangible day-to-day effect on what happens in my life. So the responsibility factor, I think, is maybe central to being ready to be initiated. I mean, that's what we call it, empower thyself. Because you have to take your awareness of your own power. You have to have ownership of how you're creating things before you can step in and get initiated and then have the tools to move yourself so much further, so much faster on the path. There has to be a certain baseline of responsibility to make that work. So yeah, if you're there, and you're watching the show and you're in that in-between space where that there's more and you're not really sure like where to go or what it is, like, there's something where you're stuck in some sort of lesson. And so if the more you can raise your awareness through whatever that means, whatever tools are available to you, everyone can pray, and prayer is not to any one specific God of any specific religion, but prayer is, worship of source. Prayer is gratitude. Prayer is asking the universe and spirit or light or God, goddess, or whatever you call it, or source for what you need in your life and what you desire in your life. Everyone can do that. And that's what wakes a lot of people up, because sometimes we pray consciously with our human self. And then other times it's like our soul is calling out and praying. When your soul is calling out and praying, it's different. Yeah. Something happens with your soul reaching for more. Yes. And no one can fake that. You can't pretend you're ready for that. Like your soul has to actually do it. So if you're close to that, maybe you can, the soul is kind of like a nuclear reaction. Yeah. And a nuclear reaction is ignited by, a conventional reaction, like a chemical reaction, like a regular sort of mundane world chemical reaction. And then that's like the soul is the nuclear reaction. And then your personality is like the mundane chemical reaction. And if you can desire something enough, even just because you look at your life and you maybe you heard this podcast or you realize you're like, I am stuck in some kind of lesson. Enough prayer and intention and meditation and sincere asking just from your human self can sometimes add enough fuel to that fire in the soul that the soul wakes up, and then you spend less years in suffering, because when you wake up, it's the beginning of the end of suffering.
Yeah.
Just to really take responsibility is the beginning of that end. So
may I say one comment on that before we finish? The Modern Mystery School logo, one of the things that's always fascinated me is how the logo is this flame. And it's just this simple flame, but I always equate it to that fire that exists within the soul that you're talking about. For me, like I typically see it like within the heart of a human being, this flame, this desire for goodness. And one practical tip to kind of finish this out, but no matter where you are in your spiritual journey, you feeding that fire of the desire for your own goodness, your own godliness, your own the connection with the divine, whatever that is, regardless of any dogma or programming, but the connection of the divine that exists within your heart and soul. Like the more you can connect with that and feed that and guard that and really connect with that flame, you are going to speed up your progression. The bigger that flame is, the faster you're going to go. Yes, there's suffering, but there's a lot less suffering when you're going forward and not stuck in your own stuff. So whatever we have to do to really get out of that cycle is, connect with your own goodness, find it within your heart and soul. It's right there. And then we're here to help you every step of the way too, if that's what somebody wanted.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're over our time. So thank you so much for joining me tonight, Sean. I really appreciate it. Maybe we'll be able to do this again sometime in the future and have another interview like this.
Yeah, wonderful.
Again, this is Dr. Sean Carey, and I'm Jordan Bain. This podcast is called Unveiling, and we'll see you all next Tuesday. Take care.
Excellent.